Think Travel Leadership Circle, a podcast series where we talk to industry experts about the latest and greatest travel trends. I'm Hermione Joye, Sector Lead for Travel, Google Asia Pacific, based here in Singapore. As people have become more conscious about their environmental footprint, sustainability has emerged as a key theme across many industries, not least of all ours, travel. Understanding how travellers are reconciling their love for travel with the environmental responsibility is incredibly important, not only for our short-term recovery, but also for the longevity of the industry. Today, I had the pleasure of speaking to a global leader in sustainability, Randy Durband. Randy is the CEO of Global Sustainability Tourism Council and has had a long career in travel and has made it his mission to promote sustainable travel. Hi, Randy. It's great to have you here today. Thank you very much for spending some time with us. Now, I'm a big fan of the work that you and the Global Sustainable Tourism Council does, but I'm not necessarily sure the audience is as aware of what you do and also what your company has been doing over the last few years. So before we get into our really exciting Q&A, could you share a little bit about yourself and also about your company?
Sure, yes. Well, I've personally been in travel and tourism for 40 years, more than 25 years in the private sector with outbound travel agency tour operators. And GSTC was created in 2007 by two UN agencies, UNEP, the United Nations Environmental Program, and UNWTO, to create global standards for sustainable tourism that we call the GSTC criteria. And we operate around the world with businesses, big brands, small brands. We have 22 national members. We work with destinations. So it's both public sector and private sector that we support with the application of our global standards for sustainability.
Well, I mean, that's incredibly impressive, and hats off to you, because no doubt it's been not easy to create space and noise for sustainability. But I think right now, post-pandemic, with everyone reshaping their values and really thinking about the communities and the longevity of both the travel industry and in their own lives and the planet, sustainability is really top and front of mind. And I know that when I'm talking to customers or if I'm talking to my friends and travelers, sustainability is really emerging as a theme in terms of what consumers are curious about, and also from a company's perspective, how businesses can approach that and be more strategic and thoughtful so that we ensure that our industry is successful not only in the short term but long term. Now, with this being the case, sustainability-related themes are really bubbling up through Asia Pacific. And I was curious to see what you were seeing in terms of emerging for Asia Pacific that is both like-minded to global and also different in our region.
Yeah, Asia Pacific and globally, the key issues that we're seeing in sustainability is concern about the climate crisis and reduction of greenhouse gases, 80% of which are carbons. We have to focus on that, but methane and from food waste is also a big issue. And the other global issue that's relevant everywhere is plastics. We now know that we're all ingesting plastic into our bodies, and that's radically bad. So climate and plastics have really reached a new level of global awareness and concern. In Asia Pacific, some of the things are a little bit more specific to Asia Pacific. Something in the past 5-10 years that's really been thought about a lot is visitor dispersion, about waste management, about some beaches that have not been so clean in many locations in Southeast Asia, some of which were closed and let nature repair. So that was some good steps. It's a shame we came to that point, that they weren't managed before, but I think some of those problems really raised awareness. So that's been rather kind of a unique Asia Pacific story. So, those visitor dispersion, I think, has been kind of a new theme because of crowding at some of those places. And then technologies have allowed visitors to kind of go to more secondary and tertiary kinds of places. So those are, that's a bit global as well, but I think a little bit more profound in Asia Pacific.
Yeah, I think you make a really interesting point when you talk about how technology has allowed us to experience different countries at different stages in their progression of development, and also how different, and kudos to, I mean, you're right, it's disappointing that we've got to places where that, tourism bodies have to close certain beaches or very popular destinations, but also kudos to them in terms of actually taking that step and saying, you know what, we're going to forego money in the short term to ensure that we have a long-term future. Previously to me, sustainability, and when I'm talking to my friends and you hear about it in the news, it's very broad brush in terms of it can encompass, as you mentioned, greenhouse gas emissions and beach waste up right through to biodiversity and also trade. In terms of APAC, what is the traveller feeling and how are they approaching sustainability, and what is top of mind in terms of sustainable options?
Well, I'm going to go back to the comment you made about, how people perceive sustainability. The GSTC criteria follow the work that the UN said in terms of defining sustainability, and it goes beyond just environmental issues to include social issues and cultural heritage preservation and respect for living culture. So both sets of our criteria for the public sector and the private sector include those 4 elements, and so it's broad sustainability. I think that, Asia Pacific travelers, like most, want responsible travel, but I think the challenge that we face in sustainable product is that, let's face it, when all of us are travelers, we're really fixated on price. We're looking at what's the best value I can get. The distribution mechanism is all based on, here's a great deal, buy now, click now to get this. So we're really fixated on that at time of purchase, but I think that masquerades an incredibly fast-growing desire for travelers to have more sustainable options. For example, last year, Booking.com survey showed that 53% of travelers are annoyed when they find that they can't be as sustainable as they want. And every survey we're seeing from Google and Booking and TripAdvisor and others on a global level and on an Asia-Pacific level that we've had one recently, the traveler interest and desire for sustainability is up. And it's up strongly with youth, and it's up strongly in Asia Pacific. So I think as an industry, we need to figure out how can we deliver more, because that, I think, is fascinating, that statistic of 53% of travelers are now annoyed. They get to a destination, they get to a hotel, they get to a service provider, and they can't be as green as they want to be. And I think businesses are fooled by the fact that at point of purchase, people don't ask for sustainability, but we're starting to see increasingly in satisfaction data that travelers absolutely want more responsible and sustainable choices. And so the challenge is to overcome the misconceptions about what they want or don't want. And because frankly, people want it. People are concerned about the climate and plastics and social justice. And we need, as an industry, to move much faster and bigger and better.
Yes, I definitely agree. And I think you made some really interesting points in terms of how people just naturally desire. I see a lot of news items, whether we're talking about in industry for travel or broad news items around, in the environment or sustainability. We see a lot of change in our trends. It's high growth, not necessarily high volume right now, but in terms of looking for sustainable options, whether it's be it in travel or outside of our industry. I think you make a really pertinent point in terms of there being 4 pillars and the work that you guys do around culture preservation, social preservation, also, of course, environmental preservation. I was absolutely gobsmacked around the work that CM Reap did during the pandemic. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to get across there, but once they opened up the borders, they really invested in sustainable tourism and also the future of, because they're so dependent, the future of tourism for the long term. Much more conscious in terms of the way they ask travellers to approach waste. A really interesting interesting in terms of how they're approaching the temples, the UNWTO sponsorship of making sure things are being refurbished and really bringing it to top of mind of the travellers, so much so that they even pushed back the roads and the shops that were crowding temples and things like that in the environment and redesigned the tourism experience so that it could be more sustainably friendly. And for me, that was such an eye-opener. And when I gone to the destination, I just went to experience the food, which was fantastic, experience the culture, which was humbling and also eye-opening. But what I really left with was some really positive energy also around having a more sustainable trip, because I kind of felt like I experienced some of the best in terms of how you reframe your tourism journey for tourists post-pandemic and also develop for the future and educate people on the long run. And so that's just like one example that I've seen. Have you seen any other areas? I know we've talked, and I deal a little bit with Singapore tourism board, but there's multiple countries that are really approaching sustainability in a forward-thinking way, and share some examples there.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Singapore, because it's really a city-state that's really doing great things. In fact, we at GSTC are deeply engaged, and I just came from Singapore quite recently. They're really taking a holistic approach and a systematic approach. They're providing subsidies from STB to hotels and working with the Singapore Hotel Association to raise awareness and train on issues of sustainability. And they're pushing for, they've now set a target of 60% of room capacity in Singapore will be sustainably certified by 2025. And we're talking to them about many other aspects, attractions and MICE and many destination management issues. So there's a lot of good things happening in Singapore. I would say that, throughout the world and definitely throughout Asia Pacific, we saw a very interesting trend in the pandemic. Because of the big business slowdown, we had some very sad tales of so many jobs lost, which are, now slow to get all those people back. We have massive staffing shortage throughout the world on tourism that's really impacting us. Hopefully that gets sorted out soon. But governments, civil servants, not so many lost their jobs. Maybe at a municipality, they lost something because their funding is tied to room tax at a municipality, but at national and provincial levels, we saw some very refreshing developments. A lot of countries and provinces and states used the break for planning and development. Historically, government has mostly promoted tourism and didn't know that they should be planning and developing. There's only been an awareness in the world in the past 5 or 10 years or so that we should really do more planning. We've been working in the Ministry of Tourism of Indonesia for much longer than that. They've got a very enlightened approach that's been really wonderful. But in general, it's been always about promotion. And the pandemic accelerated a process that had been underway for just a few years before the pandemic. Now they had time in their hands, and they said, we heard from so many people to say, now we've got the time, we can really do the planning we want. And we, during the pandemic, we were busier than ever. We grew as an organization because we were working with so many governments around the region. So it's very encouraging, and that puts them all in the right direction. Nobody wants, regulation, but yet you need planning, you need coordination between promotion and development. Good things happen when there are experts in tourism boards and in government making plans where they tie in infrastructure development for residents to infrastructure development for the visitors. It's hard to separate them, but some coordination and investment is absolutely necessary. So really good things happening. And then in Japan, we're working with the national government on destinations, as we've been doing in Indonesia for several years. Thailand is kind of upping their game at applying standards and training people. So yeah, there's good movement, and that's one positive of the pandemic, I would say, is greater awareness for better planning and development, and not just promoting, but improving.
It is quite interesting because we talk about this sort of reset of values, refocus. The pandemic gave us, and that's why I think people are really looking to travel to help them gain their experiences and execute on their values, because people really value human touch. People have a greater awareness of the value of experiences and being together. We've seen a real rise in the travel for love. So people going to travel to connect with their loved ones and travel as a family and create those memories. We've seen a rise for travel for medical. Get to the places where you can make sure you're getting best in class medical experience. And also we've had that rise of the revenge traveler who just wants to go and experience the world, but values that milestone moment incredibly much and is first mover. I think within this, what's been quite interesting to see is how people are responding once they're out and about and revaluing the experience. And you touched on something a little bit earlier in terms of frustration of travellers in terms of not having a fully sustainable experience. Now, I've had multiple trips recently. I'm very lucky enough and privileged enough to be able to go off and do that, whether it be work or personal. And what I have really noticed is my heightened awareness in terms of the sustainable moments or opportunities within my travel experience, be it the hotel or on the flights, or actually in terms of the activity itself. You really sit probably on a pile of information that people don't have access to. Are you able to share maybe some insights in terms of, let's start with hotels, how they could approach sustainability or more sustainable, take more sustainable actions in the short term, and then maybe we could break it down to flights and activities.
Sure. Yeah, hotels can do a lot more. I mean, we've seen good movement in recent years. Everybody put in motion detectors and LED lighting, so lighting is using less energy. But in the warm climates of Southeast Asia, we could do so much more in aircon. For an example, I travel a great deal too, and I might get a bulletin or an email or a text asking what time I'm arriving so they can inform housekeeping and front desk, So it's very annoying to me. I get angry when I've informed the hotel that I'm arriving at midnight and I come into my room in a hot climate and the temperature was set on 18 degrees. It was probably that way from about 1 p.m. They're not letting me be as green as I want to be. And they're just, well, if they could inform housekeeping, why didn't they inform them to not just have the room ready, but change that policy. Don't set it at 18 for 12 hours before I even get there.
Oh, I think you make a valid point there. It's not only cost saving for them because they wouldn't have aircon running, but it's also giving that customer a more valuable experience and personalized experience. And so it's really them leaning into their first party information that the consumer chooses to share and say, okay, well, we don't need to run this. They're coming at this time. Let's just be a bit more thoughtful and planned and strategic. Are there other stuff?
Exactly. Let's build it into the operations of things. Absolutely.
Yeah. And what other things could they do?
Plastic water bottle annoy me. I mean, hotels we're still having too many plastic water bottles. Hotels don't realize there's two ways they could actually save money by avoiding plastic. They could either have dispensers. When I was just in Singapore, I was in Resort World Sentosa, the Hotel Michael. They've got flasks in each room where you use a water dispenser, and they've removed the plastic water bottle. That's one method. Other hotels have found that it's actually cheaper to have glass bottles and have a sterilization unit inside your building to sterilize the bottle and refill them with filtered water. That's cheaper than buying all that plastic. So why are not hotels doing all of this yesterday? So there's a number of things that we could be doing today. And then one other thing I want to say about hotels is that big international brands are mostly on a franchise model. So even if they have an internal program across the brand, the owners need to step up and participate in those programs and do much more. The owners are kind of hiding in the background. So the brands talk about their campaigns and their structure, what they can do, but the individual hotels are not picking up on it nearly as much. So we need to really get a call out to the big brands to do a lot more because they know what to do. They're just moving too slowly.
Yeah, I think you make some really thoughtful points and consider points around how hotels. I personally believe it's probably a lack of education in terms of the functional changes that they can make. And I'm very happy to challenge ourselves to partner and do something positive and make sure we get the right information out there, because I think a lot, well, what's happening is, a lot of, even if it's a franchisee or a small mum and dad, they don't have the same information, access information, and they've got many things on their plate. So if they could understand it was so easy and that it saves the environment, and also it's likely to create more loyal consumers or happy consumers, then I think, net it's a win for them as well. But we just need to get out there and advocate it and make sure they're getting these sort of simple messages in the short term to get out there. So what I'm hearing from you is, simply if we can shift to, glass bottles or, filtered water stations. I mean, everyone loves a free branded bottle in my experience that will keep their water cool, and it's great branding for those little hotels and reminder moments when you get home. If you can think about using your first party data so that you're really offering that personalized experience and adapting rooms accordingly. And then also, of course, if you can be mindful around housekeeping, think about new ways in terms of light systems as you're updating your or building your hotel, then you can actually make sustainable also affordable and create a loyalty moment through it. Because what I'm hearing is frustration, but what I'm seeing in all the data is that people are looking for this. So they may not necessarily, it may not be the final conversion point. It's often price, but it's something that encapsulates a conversion moment and also spreads the word post an experience. So, I recently went to a beautiful resort in Phuket, and they offered me multiple sustainable moments, including growing their own veggie pats, using glass bottles. And I saw this as a moment to really share with my friends and say, look, this was not only an amazing family moment and experience and time, but also sustainable, and that creates a lot of interest. In terms of flights and activities, is there anything else that you would suggest that airlines could be doing that simply could be implemented in the short term to try and create more buzz and positive moments around sustainability?
Well, there's a lot of work on developing sustainable aviation fuels, but that's a real challenge because the producers of sustainable aviation fuel can't ramp up to get good unit price until more airlines commit to the purchase and to the further research and development. There's a lot of different options. So there's some individual airlines that are doing good work on that. But I think more airlines, and if they took it more as an industry collective action, because we need that conversion to be able to ramp up to production of sustainable aviation fuel options. So they've done a lot in the last 20, 25 years on more efficient aerodynamic design and lighter weight materials. So modern aircraft are much more fuel efficient than they used to be. But still, I think we could probably move faster on sustainable aviation fuel if there was, like I say, collective action. Another thing I would add, though, beyond aviation is land transport. Look at the explosion of EVs. Individuals are buying electric vehicles for their personal lives very much. Why can't a destination say to all the rental car companies at your municipality or in your province and say, you buy a whole new fleet and turn them over every 3 to 5 years. Usually in urban centers, it's 3 years, and it could be a little bit longer in some other places. Whatever it is, and say, if your average turnover of your entire fleet is 4 years, then 5 years from now, you must have all EVs. And it's non-competitive. They all have the same price structure. The competitors do. We need DMOs and government to step up and build the infrastructure of electric charging stations and have that mandate to convert rental cars. I mean, there's so many things we could do. And what frustrates me is that aviation is a bit of our Achilles heel in travel and tourism because of the timeline it's going to take to really get aviation to be cleaner. But we could make everything on land super green yesterday. So it's a little bit frustrating to me that we're not doing more. So let's set the policies and the incentives and take collective action as trade associations, whatever it takes. Let's all do it. Because we got the technology and the costs are coming down rapidly on all the conversions.
Well, I think, I think cost was a big barrier. And I think often, misconception is that sustainable means more expensive. And what you've educated us on today is that it doesn't have to be. And also that, it's really about a collective effort. Because I think often people are like, oh, well, it's just me, it won't matter. But in fact, the individual makes up the many, and then their actions and creates change. So it really is the onus on all of us travelers in particular in the travel industry, to be, more pro sustainability and share those sustainable moments. I'm super grateful. I know that it's a small thing, but for the sustainability filters that, I know that Google's incorporated into the search experience as it pertains to flights, also hotels and the badges, also what Booking.com and Agoda and a few other, I think Airbnb, the more sustainable experiences, or the more sustainable options, because, for me as just a simple traveler, it's quite confusing sustainability, and to know what I'm truly, is being additive and how I'm helping the environment. But the more that people can distill it and make it easy for to travel to experience it, I think the more likely people to take it up. You mentioned earlier on that you've been working with Bali and Indonesia tourism for a while. Could you share some of the initiatives that they have taken place around the community to help sustainability grow?
We haven't done a tremendous amount directly in Bali, but I was mentioning there's a wonderful group in Bali that created a website called refillmybottle.com, and it's spread to other places. And it's brilliant because I've seen tour operators over the years issue refillable, reusable water containers, but then the client doesn't know where to go to fill it, right? So this wonderful website, refillmybottle.com, the suppliers of water, whether they're giving the water for free or making a small charge for the water, on your smartphone, you can easily have an app and go find it with your water bottle. You can go over Bali without using a plastic water bottle if you bring your reusable bottle from home. So a group of wonderful people put the energy into making that happen. So that can be replicated anywhere.
I think that's so fantastic, and I'd love to see refillmybottle.com replicate or scale. Are there any other, let's say, sustainability hack companies that can help scale that you've come across any industry?
Well, every brand that you just mentioned, Google, Booking.com, Agoda.com, Airbnb, are all GSTC members. We were delighted to have Google join us about a year or so ago. We've been working with Booking.com for years. And when Google signed on to Travelist recently, by signing on to Travelist, they agreed to work non-competitively on sustainability issues. And so I really applaud these big brands for doing that. This has really been huge. So we've been working with Booking.com for 5 years of testing approaches on the filtering. And it's been tested in various source markets, but the program is growing and is going global. And so travelers will be able to filter on search results that Booking.com has built with our involvement all these years. And now that Google signed on, as soon as Google signed on the Travelist, we were on the phone with them talking to their people, your people, right from the start. And so that's very exciting, and that's really thrilling. And that's what we need, is that pre-competitive, non-competitive sharing in a collective way to make it all better. So we're really excited about Travelist. We stay in close touch with the Travelist people, and Agoda does good things. And it's all moving a little slower than I'd like, but it's moving. And the important thing is that there is now quite recently.
Well, I think, not to make excuses for our industry, but obviously being hit hard during the pandemic, it's been hard to move as fast as we want. But I do think that the people in the industry that have stayed around and been thoughtful have really invested in the right thing, be it, tech or and digitization, and also sustainability, and that planning that you said, that purposeful planning around, the future of their business and their future of their travel. Now, we have to wrap. It's been a fantastic conversation, but I have a few questions, just rapid fire for you. In terms of your favorite upcoming new sustainability technology, what is it?
New technology. Wow. Well, it's been tested, but nobody's really refined this, is to have a smart app that talks to your hotel room about the aircon setting, 20 minutes before you arrive in your room.
Oh, I like it. Okay, I like that a lot. Favorite sustainable moment when you've been traveling? Most recently, or ever?
Ooh, I'm a little bit too grumpy and picky that
Come on, you can do it.
I was talking about EV conversion, and here in Korea, Jeju Island has targets for the entire island province converting to EVs. And there's a little island off the main island that it's all electric vehicles. And when you get off the ferry, it's really cute. Young couples are in a little electric cart, and you can get on an electric bus to go around. That little island is Udo. Just breaks. I just love it. It just warms my heart that it's all 100% clean energy vehicles. So that's a warm moment.
Well, Randy, you need to get out there and do more sharing, I think, and I'm going to challenge myself to share more fantastic, sustainable moments and educate, masses at scale, not only my friends, but also, the industry. So I think that we hopefully might forge a strong partnership after this and see what we can do together to speed things along and also just educate, because it sounds like there's a bit of a gap as it pertains to that. But I want to thank you very much for sharing your expertise. I appreciate it. It's a very tough topic, and it's been a long journey, but I think we're heading in the right direction. So the pandemic has been good for that. I'm certain of it. But thank you very much for your time, and speak to you soon.
You're very welcome. My great pleasure.